Hello again to all subscribers and listeners of this channel. Hope you're enjoying your 4th of July. But let's go ahead and go on. Again, this is the next part in the series. Why Evolution is Bullshit, Part 3. Human Evolution, number 7 through 9. Evolution is the hypothesis, posing as a theory that people believe is a fact. We're now moving on to number 7 through 9 of part 3 of the series. Here I will discuss what Homo erectus most likely did to survive and why that scenario makes more sense than the conventional idea. Where did our gray matter come from? And why is it disproportionately higher than the gray matter of the apes? And finally, where did human sexual reproduction come from? And why is it so different from pretty much all of the other terrestrial mammals? With that being said, let's get into it. Number 7. What did Homo erectus and similar hominids most likely do to survive? Well, according to the evolutionary model, Homo erectus somehow was a tree dweller or arboreal in the ancient past. Then sometime in its history, it suddenly moved onto the land and became terrestrial. There are many reasons why this is wrong, or at least makes no logical sense. The reasons are: 7a. Homo erectus never seemed to possess the ability to climb in the first place. When looking at the Homo erectus skeleton or diagram of their anatomy, their body, it becomes pretty apparent that their lack of arm length, their lack of upper body strength, the density and the thickness of the bones, the shape of their pelvis, pretty much shows that they were exclusively land dwellers. They were terrestrial. They don't have the features of an arboreal ape-type organism. There's not enough evidence that they ever lived in the trees at all. It's only a speculation, and a pretty bad speculation, as far as I can see. 7b. The trees were safer. Again, as I've stated, in section 4 through 6, in the last video, it wouldn't make sense for Homo erectus. It would not make sense for Homo erectus to leave the trees when the trees were safer. Homo erectus was smaller, lighter in weight, and was probably pretty agile, but not very fast. Again, there's no evidence that they could climb or live in trees. But if they did indeed live in trees, they would have stayed there. They would not have gone on land where it was more dangerous. Most predators back then and today are terrestrial, and we only have a few that are arboreal, according to the fossil record and what we see today. Most terrestrial predators cannot climb. They lack the claws and the shoulder structure to do so, and the few that could climb would not be able to climb as high into the tree as Homo erectus, considering that Homo erectus is lighter in size and lighter in weight. So therefore it can climb up to the higher tree branches that much further away. Whereas the predator, too heavy, he can't climb that high. The tree branch would break under his weight. So as long as it stayed in the trees, it actually had a good distance or a good way to protect itself from the heavier, larger carnivores. 7c. Homo erectus appeared to be too weak and too small to fend off predators, yet large enough to make an easy meal for the predators. So couldn't fight back, but it was an easy thing for the predator to go on if the predator wanted to choose an easy meal to take down. With the body structure similar to a human, but shorter, slimmer, and with shorter arms and legs, a predator running down a Homo erectus would have been the easiest meal on the Great Plains at that time. 7d. The grasslands provided very little cover, and they didn't provide any protection. Also, if Homo erectus had darker fur, stood bipedally over the grassland, he would have been much easier to spot from a distance, and he would also have no protection once the predator began its charge. So what would Homo erectus have done to survive? Simple. They would have had bred large numbers of offspring, and they would have survived in large populations. Homo erectus most likely survived in massive populations so huge that if predators did kill and eat them, it was never enough to bring their population down significantly. Exactly like what you see with the buffalo, the zebra, the giraffe. The prey animals, their population is so big, the predators can hunt them pretty much indefinitely and never have to worry about going into a population overshoot type of situation where they eat too many of them, then the population dies, etc. They don't have to worry about that since the prey animal is going to breed so much and have so many offspring, their population will be stabilized even if they get hunted. They also might have stayed closely together in large herd-like structures, with the oldest and most expendable on the outside and the youngest and most vulnerable towards the center, thus keeping the population alive at the expense of a few weak and feeble ones who are either older or injured, just like many herd animals do today. Number 8. Where did our gray matter come from? Well, first let us break down some facts about gray matter and how it ties to the evolutionary theory. 8A. What is gray matter? Gray matter, according to dictionary.com, is the neural tissue, especially of the brain and the spinal cord, that contains the nerve cell bodies as well as nerve fibers and has a brownish gray color. End quote. 8B. What does gray matter do? Gray matter basically serves as the material that holds all the nerve cell structures together and allows these nerve cells to transmit signals to and from the brain. Most gray matter is in the brain and in the spinal cord. That's the vast majority of where our gray matter is. Also, from Wikipedia, article about gray matter in the brain, and I quote, "Gray matter includes regions of the brain involved in muscle control and sensory perception, such as seeing and hearing, memory, emotions, speech, decision-making, and self-control," unquote. Whereas gray matter in the spine is split into 3 columns. The anterior gray column contains the neurons that control muscle movement. The posterior gray column contains the neurons that allow us to feel fine touch, vibration in our bodily position. And the lateral gray column is the third major column in the spinal cord. And I'm going to have links to that in the description, so you'll see what I'm talking about. 8C. What is the difference between the gray matter in humans versus the great apes? Well, one of the biggest differences between our neuron count and the neuron count of great apes is that we humans have about it's like 2.5 to 3 times as many neurons in our brain and spinal cord as the apes do. The problem here is that no one seems to want to explain how neurons grow or how neurons evolve within the species. 8D. Why is this problematic? It's problematic for the evolutionary theory because when one realizes that neurons don't seem to grow or change throughout our lives, there's no way of knowing exactly how many neurons were in the bodies of the extinct hominids. So if neurons don't grow in size or multiply, how would a common ancestor evolve to have a higher neuron count as it becomes more and more like a hominid? Where would those extra neurons and extra gray matter come from? So the idea is the common ape ancestor may have had a lower neuron count, but no one seems to be able to show us exactly how that common ancestor became the different hominids and different apes that had a higher neuron count. There doesn't seem to be any explanation for that. Or if there is, I haven't been able to find it. Number 9. Where did our sex organs, human sexuality, and menstruation cycles and other things about our reproduction come from? We Homo sapiens sapiens have sexual reproduction that's dramatically different from that of most of terrestrial mammals, including the great apes. Let's compare and contrast. 9a. What do most mammals have? Most male mammals have a thorny or spiny penis that is much shorter and thinner. Many male mammals actually have a bone in or underneath the penis that helps it to become erect. Female mammals have a vaginal orifice and clitoris, although they are not as pronounced in these other organisms as they are in humans. Where most mammals have a mating season where they mate multiple times within that time period in the mating season, but they won't mate at all throughout the rest of the year. That's almost all terrestrial mammals. 9b. What do the great apes have? Pretty much all of the male apes have the long but thin, well, not that long, it's actually shorter. It's about between 1 to 3.5 inches in the penis when it comes to and then it also has the bone attached to it that helps them get the erection. They also appear to have testicles that vary in size. Chimps tend to have massive testicles, many times larger than a human, yet gorillas have much smaller testicles that are slightly smaller than human. Whereas female apes do seem to have some type of menstrual cycle, but it's not as pronounced as in human females. And to this day, remains somewhat difficult to study. According to what I've been researching, they haven't really gotten a lot of info about the actual menstrual cycle of the female apes. But they know they do seem to have some type of menstrual cycle to some degree. Also, many primate females visibly display a difference in their bodies, in their physiology, and their anatomy when they are ready for mating. When they're in heat or when they're in estrus. A good example of this is the swelling of the buttocks and the reddening of it that occurs when she's ready to mate with the male. 9c. What do humans have? Humans are very different from the apes and the other terrestrial mammals. Humans have a somewhat strange sex organs, sexual activities, and sexual characteristics compared to most of the other mammals. Like I said, human males have a much larger and thicker penis that engorges with blood to get stiffer and to get erect. We do not have a bone in our penis at all in order to aid in erection. Whereas human women have more prominent labias, they have constantly large breasts or more sensitive clitoris, the most intense and obvious menstrual cycles. But unlike female animals, human females do not have an obvious bodily display to show when they're interested in having sex. That's never been seen in human females, ever. Also, humans, unlike animals, as far as I know, as far as the research shows, anthropologically, historically, mythologically, etc., human beings have never had a mating season. We do not have sex at a certain time of the year and then forego sex for the rest of the year. That's never been witnessed in our species throughout the entirety of our existence on this planet. So, human beings are one of the fewer or lesser number of animal species that just don't have a mating season. Why we don't do that, I'm not sure, but we never had that. 9d. Question. Why is the human sexual anatomy and the mating practice or the mating process so different in humans compared to all the other terrestrial mammals? Nobody seems to know why. One observation is that our sex organs, our sexuality, and even our subcutaneous fat layers are far more similar to that of marine mammals than they are to terrestrial mammals. But that still doesn't explain why human sexuality operates the way it does. Despite the fact we're genetically more similar to the apes than any other organism on the planet, yet we're physiologically more similar to pigs and aquatic mammals. So that meshing together of our genes are more similar to the chimpanzee, but our body is more similar to that of like a seal or a dolphin or a whale. That mashing together those two different things doesn't make sense, but that's what we humans have. And as far as I know, no one has a good explanation as to why we have the aquatic features we have but we're genetically more similar to apes who don't have aquatic features. There does not seem to be a good explanation for that. Hopefully somebody will come up with one. And no, the aquatic ape theory is not quite good enough. Not to me, but whatever. 9E. This needs to be explained through evolution. But like I said, no theory, including the aquatic ape theory, does a good enough job of explaining this weird mishmash of our genetic and physiological characteristics in humans compared to other mammals. We need an explanation for how Homo erectus actually survived predation despite its anatomical setbacks being a terrestrial being. We need an explanation for the explosion of gray matter in the human brain and nervous system. And we need a really good explanation for how we human beings formed our sexuality. Also need a good explanation for where we got our somewhat aquatic features, despite the fact our genetics are most similar to chimpanzees and gorillas. And as far as I can see, evolution has not done a good job of explaining any of those things, of being able to break down and get us to understand any of those observations. That's all for now. I'm going to stop here and continue on with the series in the next couple of days. So please like, subscribe, share, and donate to support this channel. You all have a nice day. Enjoy your 4th of July Independence Day. I'm out. Peace.